Matthew chapter 9 verses 1 and 2 says, "And having entered into a boat, he passed over and came to the own city. And behold, they were bringing to him a paralytic lying on a bed. And Jesus, having seen their faith, said to the paralytic, 'Take courage, son, your sins have been forgiven.'" Matthew chapter 9 verses 3 to 5 says, "And behold, some of the scribes said to themselves, 'This one blasphemes.' And Jesus, having known their thoughts, said, 'Why do you think evil in your hearts? For which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or to say, arise and walk?'" Matthew chapter 9 verses 6 to 8 says, "But so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." Then he says to the paralytic, "Having arisen, take up your mat and go to your house." And having arisen, he went away to his house. And the crowds, having seen, marveled and glorified God, the one having given such authority to men. Mark chapter 2 verses 1 and 2 says, "And he having entered again into Capernaum after some days, it was heard that he is in the house. And many were gathered together, so as to have no more space, not even at the door, and he was speaking the word to them." Mark chapter 2 verses 3 and 4 says, "And they come, bringing to him a paralytic, being carried by 4. And not being able to come near to him on account of the crowd, they removed the roof where he was, and having broken it up, they let down the pallet on which the paralytic was lying." Mark chapter 2 verses 5 to 7 says, "And Jesus, having seen their faith, says to the paralytic, 'Son, your sins are forgiven.' And some of the scribes were sitting there and reasoning in their hearts, 'Why does this man speak thus? He blasphemes. Who is able to forgive sins except God alone?' Mark chapter 2 verses 8 and 9 says, "And immediately Jesus, having known in his spirit that they are reasoning thus within themselves, says to them, 'Why do you reason these things in your hearts? Which is easier to say to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven, or to say, arise and take up your mat and walk?'" Mark chapter 2 verses 10 to 12 says, "But that you might know that the Son of Man has authority to forgive sins on the earth. He says to the paralytic, 'I say to you, arise, take up your mat, and go to your home.' And he arose, and immediately, having taken up the mat, he went forth before all, so as for all to be amazed and to glorify God, saying, 'Never did we see thus.'" Luke chapter 5 verses 17 and 18 says, "And it came to pass on one of the days that he was teaching, and Pharisees and teachers of the law were there sitting by, who were come out of every village of Galilee and of Judea and of Jerusalem. And the power of the Lord was there for him to heal. And behold, men carrying upon a mat a man who was paralyzed, and they were seeking to bring him in and to place him before him." Luke chapter 5 verses 19 and 20 says, "And not having found what way they should bring him in, on account of the crowd, having gone up on the housetop, they let him down with the mat through the tiles, into the midst before Jesus. And having seen their faith, he said, 'Man, your sins have been forgiven you.'" Luke chapter 5 verses 21 and 22 says, "And the scribes and the Pharisees began to reason, saying, 'Who is this who speaks blasphemies? Who is able to forgive sins except God alone?' And Jesus, having known their reasonings, answering, said to them, 'Why do you reason in your hearts?'" Luke chapter 5 verses 23 and 24 says, "Which is easier to say, your sins have been forgiven you, or to say, arise and walk? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on the earth to forgive sins." He said to the one having been paralyzed, "I say to you, arise, and having taken up your mat, go to your house." Luke chapter 5 verses 25 and 26 says, "And immediately having stood up before them, having taken up that on which he was lying, he departed to his home, glorifying God. And amazement seized all, and they were glorifying God, and were filled with fear, saying, 'We have seen remarkable things today.'" Matthew chapter 24 verse 14, Jesus Christ said, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed in all the earth, for a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come." To the one listening, always remember that Jesus Christ loves and cares for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please subscribe, like, and share, so others will know the truth about the good news, Jesus Christ and his teachings. And don't forget to click the bell button so you will be notified of my next videos.